All right. So, welcome to the Fit Family Lifestyle Podcast, everybody. Today, I have a super special guest. He is the host of his own podcast, also the host of Access Vegas. He's the founder of the Men of Action Mentoring Program, and former captain of the United States Air Force. So, big welcome for Mr. Michael Sartain. How's it going, Michael?
Hey Casey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Listen, I really appreciate you joining me on my little operation here. Um, you know, I am a online fitness weight loss coach, and primarily most of my clients are women, but I do work with a handful of men. And one of the things that I'm aware of is that uh, testosterone is an issue with a lot of the men that I work with that are overweight or obese or just really struggling. And so I wanted to talk with you. I follow all your stuff, and you're you're very articulate about the implications of testosterone in men's health, and the evolutionary biology and psychology around that. So I wanted to pick your brain about that and hopefully provide some value for the handful of male clients that I have that need to hear it. So I mean, it's pretty common that a middle-aged man who's overweight and struggling to get in shape might have low testosterone. So first question is, how does excess fat affect men's hormones and hormone levels, and what happens to your testosterone when you have excess weight?
So first off, I just want to say I'm not a doctor. I would recommend everybody who's even considering anything that we're talking about here today, go to a TRT clinic. And I would prefer that you went to a TRT clinic as opposed to going to an endocrinologist or going to a urologist. An endocrinologist and a urologist are going to look to keep you from having prostate cancer. They're going to look to keep you from having a stroke, from having excessively high testosterone. What they're not going to do is look to cause you to be able to perform mentally in the bedroom, be able to perform as far as mental focus is concerned. They're not concerned with your focus. They're concerned with your prostate, like I said before.
Right.
So a TRT clinic, they're more concerned with performance. And so that's why I would recommend you start there, because what'll happen is you'll have somebody go in there and they'll be, 35 years old, and they'll be at the bottom of the normal range, which is, let's just say, total test in the 300s or the 200s. Well, that's ridiculous. Like, your test is down there. Your penis doesn't work anymore at that point. You're probably, excessively overweight. You haven't had sex with your wife or any interest to have sex with her in like a couple of weeks. And that you have a doctor telling you you're in the normal levels. It's absurd.
Right.
So
Normal for who, right?
yeah, normal for her. Like, again, if you want any level of performance in your life, I would recommend a TRT clinic rather than going to a urologist. Now, that being said, just the disclaimer aside, what happens, and I'm just going to speak in generalities here, because first off, this is something that has affected me particular, and then a lot of my clients. What happens is, as you get older, it's an evolutionary adaptation for your body to produce less testosterone. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, these are all hypotheses, but they're pretty solid ones. One of them would be the idea that as your veins and arteries become less plastic, meaning less pliable during the course of your life, they harden. Then you having thicker blood, which testosterone causes your blood to be thicker. It also causes your body to produce more red blood cells. When that happens, you have a higher chance of stroking out or having some sort of pulmonary, issue, and so, or high blood pressure. So a lot of times what evolution will do is cause you to over time have less and less testosterone. The other thing is, from an evolutionary standpoint, the men who are protecting the tribe, going out every day and competing for females, and doing those things that high testosterone individuals do. When you see guys in their, from the ages of 18 to say 28, professional athletes, or guys who just do stupid shit to and try to impress women in fast cars and stuff like that. You also see violent crime is very, very, very much regulated to that age group as well. What happens is, you'll as you get older, you're not in that competitive marketplace. You've probably established yourself, hopefully financially to some extent. You may have a partner, you may have some children. So the necessity for high levels of testosterone when you move into your 40s just isn't as high from a tribal standpoint, from an evolutionary standpoint. It just isn't that high. Now, if you're me and you're 45 years old and you have 17 people working for you and working with you, and you have a company that's about to do 8 figures, and you're dating a stunning woman who's in her early 20s, and occasionally the two of you see other women together, and you got to go to the gym 5 days a week in order to be in good enough shape in order to attract women who look like that, then you don't have the privilege of becoming the fat, old 45-year-old man. You have to continue to perform. And so in my case, I've chosen, rather than the natural progression of things, to let my total test numbers go into the 300s and the 200s. I've chosen to keep it in the 800s and the 900s consistently, probably maybe 700s in the winter, consistently. And because of that, it's made a world of difference. I have a close friend of mine, he's in his 50s. And the way I described it to him was, the world was sort of gray when I was 38. Like, I kind of enjoyed good food, and I kind of enjoyed having sex with my girlfriend, and I kind of enjoyed going to work, and I kind of enjoyed going to the gym, but I was just sort of like blah, just like gliding through life. And then when I started taking testosterone, the world became colorful again. Sex was incredible again. Food tasted better. The colors in the world around me were just more vivid.
Right.
I felt
It's
like
like
I
the
was 19
Wizard of
years old
Oz
again.
when it comes into
It is.
color, right?
It's incredible when you experience it. So that's essentially what I experienced when I got on TRT. The other thing is, it's regulated. I don't, my blood pressure's checked. I donate blood every 2 months. So in order to keep my hemoglobin levels down. But what happens over time is, as that testosterone level decreases, your ability to maintain muscle mass, lean muscle mass, also decreases. This is one of the reasons why you see women after they get pregnant, unless they're breastfeeding excessively, they have a harder time getting rid of that excess fat. And you see women, when they get into their 30s and 40s, they can become fatter quicker than men because they don't maintain as much muscle mass. And so a lot of times you'll see this with guys who are really good athletes. When you look at their mothers, you'll see their mothers are just overweight because they had the same sort of like high muscle mass, girl in their early 20s. And as they got older, that muscle turns to fat because the testosterone levels drop vociferously. What happens when you have that much fat, though, again, another adaptation is, when you have that much fat, for women, that fat, or in general, humans, when testosterone passes through that fat, it aromatizes and becomes estrogen. A lot of people think that your body just, as men, we just produce a ton of estrogen. We don't realize that our testosterone can be converted into estrogen. So now you have less testosterone because you've gotten older. You getting older, having less testosterone, causes you to maintain less lean muscle mass, which causes you to, some of those calories you intake now turn into fat. And that fat additionally now converts the remaining testosterone into estrogen. And so just consider, when you guys go to like a bar, like an old honky tonk, or just some dive bar, and you'll see a guy, he's sitting at the edge of the bar, and he's in his like 50s or 60s, and he's got man boobs, and he's shaped like a marshmallow, right?
Yeah.
You know the guy, you've seen the guy, and he's on his like 6th beer, and he's watching the game, right? That guy, and if you look at his kids are like fit and young and skinny, but he's fat. That guy, what's happened is his testosterone levels have dropped vociferously, but he still continues to eat the same number of calories. And so it's been converted to fat. And then that fat now converts, aromatizes testosterone into estrogen. And so now you see the man boobs. You'll also see like different, the puffy face. You might actually some emotionality and some like excessive sensitivity that starts happening. And that happens from excessive estrogen.
Oh,
So
and
it's a simple
it
function.
sounds like it ends up being a vicious cycle because,
Yes.
then
A
with
cycle
low
downwards,
T,
but it's not a cycle. It's a vicious spiral. It's a
okay,
spiral
yeah, that makes sense.
downwards into just getting you fatter and higher levels of. So, but people will. Well, I'm not going to go to this level where they say testosterone makes you more masculine. Yes, physiologically it does, or that estrogen makes you more feminine. Estrogen can make you more sensitive. Yes, and estrogen can cause you to maintain higher levels of water weight. Estrogen also causes you to be able to regrow bone tissue. And so what will happen a lot of times, people will take those heavy estrogen blockers because they don't want any of their testosterone converting into estrogen, because they paid a lot of money for that testosterone cypionate, and so they don't want any of their estrogen converting into testosterone. And you'll see, I've had that happen, but where I was taking too much of an estrogen blocker, anastrozole, and it caused me to start having joint aches because my body was not rebuilding bone tissue fast enough because I didn't have enough estrogen. When women have very, very low estrogen levels, say after menopause, they go through what's called osteoporosis. You can see bodybuilders go through the same thing when they take excessive estrogen blockers because they don't want to waste any of that excessive testosterone. You'll also see the opposite, where a guy won't take any estrogen blocker at all, and he'll load up on test. And we're talking about guys sometimes who are abusing anabolic steroids as well. And they'll load up on testosterone, and then that testosterone, what's left will also convert. You as a man, you're going to have some body fat, no matter, like, if you're taking a fucking ton of testosterone, you're going to have some body fat. Some of it will aromatize to estrogen, even if you have a low body fat percentage. And then that's when
Right.
you're going to see what I believe a lot of where the roid rage comes from is the aggressiveness from the testosterone with the emotionality from the estrogen.
Right.
And
That
then
makes
that's when you
sense.
see the excessive crazy behavior.
Hmm.
Chris Benoit, you remember killing his murder suicide, killing his kid and his
Hmm.
wife. And like, I would say, if I was going to guess, I would say that's probably steroid abuse, where something
Hmm.
like that happens. And then you see some of these bodybuilders that end up stroking out because of excessive testosterone. So there's too much estrogen and then there's too little estrogen. That can also be something that can happen. I think that the fact that we live in 2023 and we can legally regulate both of those numbers, I think we should regulate
Right.
both of those numbers. Not only because it makes sense from a health perspective, but anecdotally for me and for my clients, it's just a life and death difference. I mean,
Hmm.
I see guys and I see the marshmallow physique. I see the cracking of the voice. I had a hypothesis, and I can't prove this, but my hypothesis is this: Will Smith looks great for being 50 something years old. Will Smith looks terrific. I think Will Smith's on TRT. If I was going to guess, I'd say there's a better than 50% chance he's taking something. Okay. I think Will Smith may have been taking TRT and then just reading those message boards that say, no, you can never take an estrogen blocker. And I think Will
Mm.
Smith, his estrogen levels started to increase after a while because he's taking TRT. I want to point out again, if you look at how old Will Smith is and how good he looks, I find it very hard to believe he's not on taking something. Maybe I'm
Right.
wrong, but I think he probably is. And if he is, and he's not taking an appropriate estrogen blocker, that would cause you to go up and be like, keep my wife's name out of your fucking mouth. And you hear his voice crack when he says it. You can
Oh
hear his
yeah.
voice crack when he says it. That is indicative to me of someone who has excessive estrogen. Again, just a hypothesis. I don't know that to be the case. I don't know what Will
No,
Smith's regimen
it
is,
makes
but
sense.
if you see someone with excessive estrogen, he's going to act very much like Will
Right.
Smith did
Acting
with
out of
Chris Rock.
emotion. Yeah.
Correct.
And I mean, what I mean by that downward spiral, as you call it, is, some of the effects of low testosterone, having that lack of a motivation, lack of that drive, living in that gray, not so colorful world, makes it hard for these men to, want to go to the gym, want to really push
Yeah.
hard, want to, excel wherever they're able to. And then so it just becomes this cycle of, I don't want to
There's
do it, and then it puts
yeah.
on more fat that just perpetuates this problem. So
There's a cycle upward when you start taking testosterone, and that is now I go to the gym and I see results from my
mhm.
workouts. Very much like when you first started lifting, when you were maybe a teenager in your 20s, and you start seeing those initial gains. You start seeing those gains again, which causes you to want to go to the gym more. And then furthermore, there are the very, very definitive studies that show that women find men with a 1.65 to 1 shoulder to waist ratio more attractive. They report having more orgasms with men who have broader shoulders. Well, the
Mhm.
easiest way, broader shoulders is actually a misnomer. It is a shoulder to waist
Right.
ratio that's
It's the
more accurate.
ratio.
And so what is the easiest way? So
And
realistically,
shrink your waist.
if I got on Tren and Deca, I could maybe get an inch or two on my
Right.
shoulders, right? Maybe. But if I'm fat, I could get 12 inches off my waist just by changing my diet and then increasing my testosterone levels and going to the gym on a regular basis. And that's another thing, guys. The other thing that test is going to do is it is going to make you hungrier. It's going to make you hornier. And so a lot of guys will get more muscular on test, but also get heavier on test because their appetite goes up. So that's something you have to like also control for. You can't. I love this saying: you can never outrun a bad diet.
Right.
You still have to watch what you eat. So you watch what you eat. You get on TRT, and now your shoulders get maybe a half inch wider, or maybe an inch wider. Like realistically, you're not taking steroids; you're taking just testosterone cypionate. It's
Right.
made out of wild yams, and then your waist gets significantly smaller. Now that shoulder to waist ratio gets more in line, and you're going to notice, as I've noticed, as my clients notice, and as anybody who's gone through this journey of being fat and then not being fat, that
Mhm.
women just look at you more. Well, forget about attraction. They just look at you more. When you take your shirt off, they stop what they're doing and they just look at you. That's what happens. That is precursors to massive levels of attraction that you get from women. It is a night and day process. And guys who make a ton of money or like extremely famous who don't take care of their physique, I just don't understand it. Justin Waller and myself, we have the same opinion when it comes to this thing, when it comes to money, muscles, game, or another way of looking at it would be money, uh, health, wealth, and relationships.
Mhm.
For us, health is first. Muscles are first.
Right.
And then
It has to
afterwards,
be. It
once
has to be the
yeah,
foundation.
yes,
It has to be the foundation. So, I mean,
yeah,
I've read that testosterone levels among men are in the lowest recorded in history right now, and
sure,
like my great grandfather in his 60s probably had higher tests than most people have, most men, today in their
sure,
40s.
sure.
So talk about the survival scenario and how we got to that
Yeah.
place in society today.
Okay, so the one of the hypotheses is, and this has not actually been proven. There's still studies, there's ongoing documentation for this, but people, especially in the conspiracy theory community, are running wild with this. And that is a combination of pesticides and plastics are causing men to have lower testosterone. I do believe there is something to the idea of us eating more processed foods and being around
Sure.
more synthetics in general, causing our bodies to not function properly, specifically causing us to have less testosterone. I don't know how that fits specifically in evolution, but maybe it does. I'm not saying it's true or it's not true. What I'm saying is that there's no definitive science specifically saying that because you drink out of a plastic water bottle, that's why your testicles shrink. Okay. But there are people who legitimately believe this. Just be
Right.
careful whenever you read those articles.
Right.
What I will say that seems like a much, much more likely scenario to me is that the population of the planet has doubled since the 1950s. And so
Hmm.
that's one of the things you have to take into account when you say that people had higher testosterone levels back then than they do now. The second thing is, I would bet you if we were to take a certain cohort, let's just say NFL players in the 1950s and NFL players today, those that are not on steroids, let's just say kickers and
Right.
kickers, quarterbacks and quarterbacks,
There you go.
I'll bet we're going to find the same levels of testosterone. I'll bet you if we looked at frogmen in the 1970s compared to they were the predecessors to the Navy SEALs today. I'll bet you we're going to find that they actually have the same levels of testosterone. Same thing with recon Marines. I'll bet you in the highest rungs of male performance, we're going to find the same levels of testosterone 50 years ago as we did today. What we're going to find that's different, though, is that the population in general has moved further and further away from the survival scenario. And in this case, what I specifically mean, we can go all the way back 50,000 years where we're legitimately in a survival
Right.
scenario. Like if I don't go find food, I'm going to starve. That's
Mhm.
legitimately, most of humanity is living no differently than a homeless person on the street, hunter-gatherer societies, very differently from that, except they're able to forage food and berries. But because of that, their lifespan is extremely short, because as soon as they have some sort of debilitating injury, their teeth fall out, or they just for whatever reason can't perform, they quickly die.
Mhm.
That there's that survival scenario, and then we go all the way back to this crazy number I still can't get out of my head, is that before the year 1850, over half the Earth's population died before the age of 5. Life was
Right.
brutal back then. Life was very much closer to a survival scenario, and if you couldn't cut the mustard, your likelihood of perishing, like for instance, Stephen Hawking, one of the smartest men who's ever lived, he had motor neuron disorder, and had he had that motor neuron disorder in the 17th century, he would
Yeah,
not have been
he
a
wouldn't have made
physicist.
it.
In
Yeah.
fact, he wouldn't have made it, right?
Yeah.
But today, but in the century that he lived in, we were able to recognize him for his incredible intellect, because we are further. He's a great example of us as humanity being further away from the survival scenario, and that's a good thing, by the way. But the
Mhm.
thing is, what happens is, as more men of low testosterone, naturally low testosterone, are able to succeed and breed more. So, for instance, the Bill Gates type, right?
Right.
I'm not trying to say anything specifically. I'm just saying an archetype.
Mhm.
Incredibly highly intelligent, not particularly muscular, doesn't spend every day in the gym. That type of individual, as the highly intelligent, low muscularity individual garners more wealth and resources, which is what happened during the last
Mhm.
century, then his children then were going to be born with lower testosterone because he had lower testosterone. What happened previously was, it wasn't always this case, but like in the big cities, maybe not so much, but on a farm, the stronger survived. Like if you
Right.
are a bigger, stronger farmer, the likelihood of you having a more prosperous farm and then finding a female to breed with was just higher. And the likelihood of you having more children was just higher, period. Society rewarded bigger, stronger, more robust men with having more children, having more mating opportunities. And once the Industrial Revolution happened, then men of lesser stature and lesser testosterone levels started to be able to breed more. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I love Jeff
Right.
Bezos. I love fucking Elon Musk. I love Bill Gates. Those guys are great. I love Warren Buffett. These are not high testosterone individuals. I think all of them deserve to be happy, and all of them deserve to have children. But in an epic, and say the 1820s, they're just not going to have as much success with women in that period of time than they are today, right? And
Right.
so So when you consider that, what happens, what the reason why I believe testosterone levels on average are lower is, like I said, at the highest rungs of society, I bet they're the same. But on the average, why it's lower is because men of lower testosterone have the ability to have more children. And as we know, testosterone levels are genetic. So one of the ways to fix that point, my dad was not a super athlete. My dad played the tuba at Southern Methodist University. I can bench press probably 150 pounds more than my father ever could, right? I've made a choice to change my endocrinology in my favor. And because of it, I date really fucking beautiful women, and I make a lot of money. Like, those are the things that happen because I made the choice to take my endocrinology on my own hands and
Right.
and make it work for me. Right. So those things are true. Our average testosterone levels going down. I don't know necessarily that it's because of the plastics. What I think is instead is men of lower testosterone just have more mating opportunities because of
Right.
the internet and because of technology and because of industrialization. And men of higher testosterone, they end up working in steel mills, and they end up working, as working as engineers and mechanics.
Sure.
And while they have higher testosterone, they're just as likely to go to prison as they are to have kids. And not all of them, but like, I'm actually, what I'm specifically talking about is men of extremely high testosterone. There's some disorders where it actually causes you to have like hyper levels of testosterone, and often we see violent felons in prison having that disorder. So that's essentially what I would say the reason why is.
So
Again,
what about I've read research about when men are in marriages or cohabitating with their partner, or in long-term committed relationships, that testosterone levels
Yes.
naturally go down. And then on
Yes.
top of that, when when your wife or partner is pregnant, then there's I've read about there being an increase in
The prolactin.
prolactin that
Yeah.
that causes issues. So
Okay.
for the average man in a committed relationship that's cohabitating with a female, what does that look like in terms of testosterone?
So terrific segue, because that was the second reason why I thought testosterone levels were going down. Is so I already brought up the genetic factor, meaning the selection pressure against low testosterone men has been removed. The second reason why I think testosterone levels have decreased over time is that within a generation, your necessity for higher testosterone decreases. Meaning, if you take biological, like monozygotic twins, and one of them works in an office and the other one works on a farm baling hay, the one who works on the farm is going to have higher testosterone levels, just in general. That's just something that happens. That has nothing to do with specifically, in this case, we're controlling for genetics because they're monozygotic twins. But as your body requires more testosterone to rebuild muscles, your body's going to produce more testosterone. So within a specific generation, what you're going to see is, as a man gets married, we can see this intergenerationally. As a man gets married, his testosterone levels go down because his body recognizes his necessity to go out there and compete for other women has decreased. So evolution teaches his testicles, hey, don't produce all this testosterone that's going to cause his blood to thicken and more, create a higher likelihood of him having a pulmonary issue or a cardiovascular issue. So that's essentially what happens. And then the same thing happens with the guy who's behind the desk, who consistently doesn't need testosterone to perform his job, and then his body puts on more fat, which goes back into the aromatization of the testosterone, turning it into estrogen, and we go down that spiral again. All of these things. We live in a society today where I don't need a lot of testosterone. That's why I go to the gym for an hour and a half, 2 hours every day to remind my body, what am I doing when I really am under that bench? Sometimes I do the bench. Casey, I know you're a personal trainer. You're going to be mad at me. Sometimes I'll put 250, 275 on the bench and I won't have a spotter. I won't. Why am I doing that though, Casey? What am I doing mentally?
Because you're putting yourself in a situation where you have to. It's your face versus that bar, and that tricks your hindbrain into saying, "Hey, we're in danger. We gotta activate. We gotta do something."
Now, there are other people in the room. I know somebody's going to save my life. We all seen the video where the guy has the big bar in his chest and he can't get it off. Eventually, someone comes and saves. I've had to save people like that all the time.
But your hindbrain doesn't know that's going to happen.
Yeah, correct. Right. So what happens is, what are you doing in that instance? What you're doing is you're tricking your brain to going back to a survival scenario. This is what being in the military does. This is what jumping out of an airplane does. This is what lifting heavy weights does. This is what being competitive. Like I would venture to say playing on the offensive line in a high school football team or a college football team is a survival scenario in between the whistles. The closer you can get your mind back to that survival scenario, the more your body's going to say, we need to produce testosterone.
Well,
Most
I've
people don't
experienced
live in
that
that survival.
doing martial arts my whole life. I mean,
There you go. There
I
you
have
go.
a double black belt, and so,
Yeah.
even though I know this is just sparring and this guy's not going to
Yes.
kill me, in the middle of that competitive scenario, someone's, whether it's kickboxing or jujitsu, someone's choking you out, your hindbrain's saying, okay, this is danger,
It's
and
such a
doesn't
visceral
recognize that
thing.
it's a sparring session.
Yeah, I recommend. So a lot of people, I don't recommend get into a sparring session because they're going to get hit, and it just doesn't work well for them. Like I've done that. I did that for a long time. I used to teach martial arts. What I do recommend everyone do is train jujitsu a little bit, because when you feel someone actually put their arm around your neck the first time when you start training jujitsu, and you come to the realization like there's no way for me to get out of this, that is as close to a survival scenario. Like you are really, the first couple times after you've done it for a while and you just tap, you get used to it. But the first couple times, you are coming face to face with death. You are understanding that without a knife or a gun, this person that you just met, this Brazilian guy that you just met, who's who's got a fucking black belt and sitting there with his gi, literally could kill you if he wanted to, and that without very little effort and leaving very little evidence, he could kill you. And you come to that realization, and it's very frightening, but that realization brings you closer to survival scenario. And after you do it, and by the way, once you fight off a couple of those rear naked chokes and those guillotines, you start saying, wow, like that's another survival scenario. I know that I can survive this situation, And I think getting closer to those scenarios as often as we can, and it's harder when you get older because you start having joint degeneration. Your joints start to degenerate. Testosterone does not fix joints, just to let you guys know. One of the issues I've had is when I'm still 45 with a messed up shoulder, a messed up hip, and a messed up knee. When I'm 45 and I'm weighing 237 pounds, and it's all muscle, that's a problem because I have to carry 237 pounds. So this summer, I actually try to cut my calories down. So maybe 1,900 calories a day. I'm trying to get down to like 211, just for the simple fact, I'm not trying to impress women anymore. What I'm doing is I want to get my frame small enough to where I'm carrying less weight, so that if I want to play basketball, I can do so and not have to carry 240 pounds around, and just be a little bit quicker off the dribble, just not put as much strain on my hip or my knee. I have sciatica. So I in order to do that, the testosterone, while it fixes your muscles, I'm still running around in a 45-year-old frame, 45-year-old skeleton. And so that is one of the issues I'll tell you. The other thing is, I'll just be honest with you. You're going to have a lot of sex if you have a girlfriend, or you start dating a super hot girlfriend, and you're going to throw your fucking hip out and pull a hamstring and all that kind of stuff. Like that'll say you're still a 55-year-old man, fucking a 27-year-old. You're still going to hurt your back. Like those kind of things still happen. You still have to stretch. You still have to hydrate. You still have to watch what you eat, and you still have your old skeleton. It's just your muscles grow quicker, and your ability to perceive things, your ability to focus, it's just very sharp, very much like when you were, it's the reason why most Navy SEALs, when they're enlisted, they're in their early to mid 20s.
Right.
That's the reason why,
Well, I haven't thrown my hip out yet, but
well, I don't know. Are you 45? No. I'm not saying throw your hip out. I just like.
No, I'm joking. No, I'm not 42. Brag, like you got I'm going to turn 43, but I am, I decided this year I'm going to do at least one more grappling competition. I'm going to do another jiu-jitsu tournament. And because I want to put myself in that scenario, because I know the effects of it. And, I'm also aware that, I go train with these younger guys, and I'm feeling it in my joints, and I know that, they're not, but I still want to put myself in that, competitive level to do that.
I had a piece of cartilage that kept getting dislocated right here in the lower part of my right rib cage. And I had to stop while I was in the military because every time it popped out, I couldn't fly. The inflammation in my ribs literally caused me to not, because I was flying missions over Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right.
And I had to stop training jiu-jitsu for a while because of it. For a long time. I literally had to take 6 months off because if I popped it out of place, I wasn't going to be able to fly.
Yeah.
Like you can fly with a sprained ankle. You can. It's not good. It's not a good idea, but you can fly with a sprained ankle. You can hurt your shoulder. But if you have some sort of like inflammation or breathing problem, you can't fly an airplane. You can't. It's really bad. If you have, because dislocated cartilage feels like broken ribs. You just can't fly like that. So after a while, I had to stop doing it. And I moved everything over to basketball, ironically. Basketball doesn't hurt your ability to fly. So I play a lot more basketball, a lot less jiu-jitsu now. I also like my ears to look the way they do. That's another thing
Well,
that
I've been
happens on
good
the
with
road.
the ears, but in
Yeah.
2020, and my followers know this story, but we decided to go skydiving for my 40th
Yeah.
birthday, and the tandem instructor didn't show up. We had never been, so they put us through a class, and we were able to go just on our own. They only took us up to
Yeah.
5,000 feet, and I hung off the strut, and
Yeah.
they deployed the chute. Everything went beautifully except for the landing. I snapped my tibia, and
Wow.
so
So how'd you
I
land? So my first time, I flare, and I was wearing some old basketball shoes. I land on both feet. My left foot slips out from under. I have a video of the whole thing, and then I just bounce on my butt a little bit, and then I'm good. It wasn't a perfect landing, but it was not it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't like
Yeah,
horrible.
well, and they prepared us for a not perfect
Yeah.
landing. They said tuck and
Yeah.
roll, and I
Yeah.
tried to do that. I flared a little too early, but it was out in the mesa here in New Mexico, and my foot slid into like a gopher hole or snake hole or
Ah,
something.
that'll do
And
it.
then I
Yeah.
tried to do the roll and just snapped the tibia. And so
Of course. That makes
I
sense.
was off my feet for better part of a
6 weeks.
year. And so
Oh, wow.
getting back to competing, oh yeah, I had a titanium plate and 13 screws. So for me, it's not only about my testosterone and my pride, but it's about just believing that I could do it again. Like I'm going to get back out there and compete one more time.
Casey, have you looked into peptides at all?
I have not.
Initially was very, what's the word I'm looking for? Skeptical. I've tried three. I'm 3 for 3. One of them was gonadorillin kisspeptin. It's a peptide that synthesizes basically the same thing that HCG does. So instead of
Okay.
getting HCG, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's a hormone that lives
Mm-hmm.
that's inside of women's urine whenever they're pregnant, which causes men to naturally produce testosterone. So
You're in luck.
when you're on exogenous testosterone, your body produces less testosterone. You take HCG, your body will then produce the testosterone that it was missing previously, and you can get up to some really high levels of test when you do that. The high levels of total test levels. What'll happen is gonadorillin kisspeptin worked. Like we tried it instead of the HCG, and it worked. That was the first one. The second one was called thymosin, BPC 157.
Okay.
I have horrible, horrible sciatica in my right hip. So it's not joint degeneration; it's just inflammation that happens from it.
Mm-hmm.
I started taking this stuff. It worked immediately. I'm playing basketball on Saturday. I'm shooting 20 milligrams in my hip right beforehand. It's not a painkiller. It just, what it does is
Right.
it causes your body to repair itself like it did when you were 20. It's a peptide that comes from inside your stomach. You know how when you
Okay.
cut yourself on the inside of your cheek and it
Mm-hmm.
heals really fast? It's
Yeah.
that. It's like Wolverine type shit. It does that, but it's for other parts of your body. And the
Nice.
third one, I'm Ozempic, semaglutide.
No, but okay.
Ozempic is this thing that Elon Musk is taking in order to lose weight. It just basically causes you to eat less. You just
Okay.
can't, like, I couldn't even finish a bowl of Chipotle last night. I ate 1.5 times yesterday. You take Ozempic. Now, Ozempic is the brand name for it. But
Oh,
I think the
Ozempic. Okay.
generic
Yeah,
term,
I'm familiar
yeah,
with that.
the generic
Yes.
form is semaglutide. That's also a
Mhm.
peptide. It's BPC 157 semaglutide.
Okay.
And those three things, I've tried 3 peptides, and all 3 of them do exactly what they say on the bottle. So I think that may be
Nice.
something that may help us when it comes to bone regrowth and joint regrowth. So far, that's what I've seen work the best.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you for that,
Yep.
because that's something. So, I mean, another question I have is, and you've talked about this a lot of times, but talk about the myth of the dad bod. A lot of the guys that I end up coming to me and they say, well, my wife says that she's okay with me having a dad bod, but I just don't feel comfortable. And at the end of the day, we know that that's not the case, that it's not
Yeah.
something that's, arousing, that it's, there's a real, I mean, you live in Vegas. How many, overweight men male reviews are there? No, everyone's at Thunder from Down Under, right?
And those men have unbelievable levels of women trying to have sex with them every single night. Like I've hung out with those guys. So one of my closest friends is dating one of the lead dancers from Thunder from Down Under, and then another one of my friends, she's actually not a professor. She's a licensed therapist, and she's dating like one of the main guys in Thunder from Down Under. And I hear the stories, and it's just like having hundreds of women just throwing themselves at these men who have these physiques. That's one data point to indicate that the dad bod thing is a myth. Here's the other thing. Here's kind of the main misunderstanding and why women say this nonsense when they know it to not be true. This is what women find attractive Okay, like
Hmm.
sexually arousing, and let's just say like vagina gets wet. This is what women
Right.
find attractive, and then this is what will make women feel comfortable.
Hmm.
So seeing their husband with the kids, taking care of the kids, being a good husband, this is something that makes her feel comfortable. She's aligned with his resources. She feels very secure. These things are what she's going to describe about her perfect man. This is the 6'3" bartender that she met in college who had sex with her 3 or 4 times and never called her back. He's just had a bad, he just had a very, he was like a scoundrel, just had a very doesn't give a shit attitude, maybe some tattoo sleeves, 6-pack abs, is
Hmm.
tall, just super exciting, wild, crazy sex. These things, women generally don't describe them as things they're attracted to, but these are the things they are attracted to. These are the things women find comforting. So one of the things that happens is, as a man, when a woman gets pregnant, the man she's pair bonded with, he's going to increase in prolactin levels, and you're going to see this pasty dad bod physique. And when you see the Seth Rogen, or if you see Elon Musk when they have a dad bod, women say that's attractive because those men have high levels of resources and they're famous. They're
Right.
already high level. So the idea that these high level resource famous men have committed to these women and then therefore have gotten fat along with these women, also the likelihood of him cheating because he's fat decreases
Hmm.
because he's less physically attractive.
There's
That
less
makes her feel
options.
more, has fewer options.
Yeah.
That means that she feels more comfortable. Remember, things that make a woman feel comfortable are things where she's gaining power. Things that make women attracted, she's actually losing power. Whenever a woman is outrageously attracted to a man, she's actually not gaining power, he's gaining power. So when you ask women what are they attracted to, they're going to describe things where they gain power. He has a dad bod. He's loyal, and he's he's a great communicator, and he's open about his feelings, and he doesn't look at other women. And these are the things that they're going to describe. Now, what they're describing is not things that cause arousal. They're describing things that garner power for them in a relationship.
Yeah, and
Women rarely say,
cause comfort.
correct,
Yeah,
that build comfort.
it's
Exactly.
the beta
Women
butts. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Women are rarely going to say, "I just want a really hot guy at a foam cannon party in Cancun with a huge cock to just bend me over and fuck me in the bushes." They'll never say that. But then you go to Cancun for Paradise Challenge, and you're literally seeing the girl who said she wanted the committed dad bod guy getting fucked by Chad Thundercock behind the bush. Like, you can see, like, one of the reasons why I love my clients to go to Paradise Challenge is because they can see Chad fucking the girl who literally said the thing where she's describing her perfect man. And then you see the Sheryl Sandberg quote where she says, "Date all of them, the bad boys, the wild ones,
Hmm.
when you're younger. And then later, when you're older, learn to enjoy the men who take out the trash for you." Right. But you're not, of course. So basically, fuck all the alpha males when you're younger. And then when you're older, settle for the beta males that will just like be a good partner and then, let you have whatever you want in the relationship. And so this is a huge disconnect. There's two main disconnects. One is women describe their perfect man by using comfort terms instead of attraction terms. That's first thing. And the second main disconnect, and this is a little bit off topic, but women, the things that give them value in their life, like being like a good philanthropist, having multiple master's degrees, and being a good entrepreneur, and a good, and being well traveled, are not the same things that make them sexually attractive to men.
Hmm.
And that women get those two things confused, because for men, they are the same thing. If a man makes a lot of money, it has a really great physique, is a really good public speaker, and has terrific alignments, he can not only be successful generally, he's also attractive to women because of those things. Whereas women, Madame Curie discovering radiation did not make her husband's penis harder for her. Those are two different things.
Right.
Her personal self-worth and her sexual market value are separate, whereas for men, they are the same. And so that's the second thing where women often get this wrong. Hey, I got my second master's degree. Where's my man? Where's
Right.
the man I was promised at the end of this journey? And then the man is not there because he's dating your 23-year-old niece who
Right.
didn't
Well,
get a
and I
master's
think the
degree.
takeaway for a lot of my male clients is that, you've been lied to by society.
Yes.
Your wife isn't necessarily always going to be honest with you. She's going to be nice. She doesn't want to hurt your
Yes.
feelings and tell you that, like, hey honey, like I'm not into this dad bod. It's going to be something that's made to be acceptable.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's just so many reasons, even biologically, that it's
Yes.
not.
So
I mean, even
so
just the hip to waist
yeah.
ratio alone
Yeah,
is important.
a lot of women are pushed back against the concept of evolutionary psychology because it it exposes a lot of these truths that don't always put men or women in the best light.
Mm-hmm.
Men consistently looking for younger partners and women consistently looking to trade up for higher status partners. It doesn't make them look really good, although we see it over and over again
Mm-hmm.
when we look in these studies. So now here's the thing that happens. A woman is, if you look at specific, one of the things I'll look at is when they survey women on short-term partners versus long-term partners. When they look at short-term partners, the dad bod is not acceptable in any way whatsoever. They're always looking for the male stripper physique, the Brad Pitt in Fight Club. They're always looking for that physique when they're looking for a short-term sexual partner. As a man, you should very much clue into that. When they're looking at the dad bod, they're looking at the dad bod for a long-term sexual partner. And a lot of times, and this is, by the way, most women, the whole dual mating strategy, Rollo and I disagree on this. I think the dual mating strategy versus the mate switching strategy, I think it's 85% mate switching strategy and 15% dual mating strategy, meaning that 85% of women generally are going to be in a relationship. The actual number is probably closer to 83% because that's what the survey said. 83% of the time, if a woman cheats on her man, that's because she's looking for a new partner to be with and she doesn't want to stay with her man anymore.
Right.
About 17% of the time, a woman will be with a man who is of lower status and then cheat on that man with a higher status man and still go back to the original man. So the first one is the mate switching strategy, and the other one is called the dual mating strategy. And so those, I think it's a blend. In reality, women are a blend of the two. But just most women, it's just not really smart from an evolutionary standpoint, from my perspective, for women to consistently be trading up to higher and higher status men when we're talking about 9 months of gestation and an 18-year pregnancy and then raising the child. 9 months of pregnancy and then 18 years raising the child. To me, it doesn't make sense for them to constantly be like switching up to taller and taller bartenders to fuck in order to have a baby. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So, and then falling in love with the scoundrel, VIP host who's been with 500 women, that doesn't make sense from an evolutionary standpoint. So I don't think that's essentially what's going on here. Does it happen sometimes? Do women have no intention of cheating and then come to Vegas and get drunk and see a super hot guy and just hook up with him? Yes, it definitely happens. Definitely happens. Even without their intent. But that is one of the things. That's why we're, I consider human beings to be hairless murder apes.
Murder apes. Yeah.
Yeah. We are subject to our evolutionary whims more, not all the time, but we're subject to our evolutionary whims more than we'd like to admit and more than we're comfortable to admit. And that goes back to what I said before. When I have tons of female friends, and when I ask them, and who did you have sex with? I don't ask them who they're attracted to because I get all kinds of weird answers about, like I said, about dad bods and loyalty and all. Okay, no, that's fine. You can keep that for someone else. Who did you actually have sex with, though? And then we go look at who they have sex with. That tells a more clear story of who they're actually attracted to, and it tends to be,
Brock the bartender, Chad.
Brock the bartender. Yeah. Chad Thundercock and Brock the bartender tend to be who they have sex with more on a short-term and sometimes on a long-term basis. And then later on, once, their options are not quite as great, once they're past, when they get to an age where they're having to compete with younger women and not doing as well, they tend to be more pliable to Alex the accountant, who has a bit of a dad bod and maybe doesn't have as many alpha qualities. Right. And so when you pay attention to those things externally, and you don't do so while you can't observe your relationship while you're in your relationship. That's why asking your wife isn't really the right answer. The correct answer is to observe studies in evolutionary psychology and then just look at how the behavior of men and women in general, you can kind of see these patterns pop up. When women look for short-term partners, they tend to be more good looking than their long-term partners. When men look for short-term partners, they will fuck anything at the bar. If they get drunk and it's 2 a.m., it's 18 to 80, blind, cripple, or crazy. Men have their standards drop to embarrassing levels when it gets to the end of the night. So that's the difference between the mating strategies of men and women.
So let's say we have your average guy. He, settled down with a woman. He's he's married, had 3 kids. Now he's in his 40s, and he's, his kids are at a point where they're, 4, 5, 6 that, don't require you to lose sleep. And he's realizing that okay, I'm not happy with my body. I'm overweight, and goes to get his levels checked and they're low. Are there things that men can do? I mean, let's say he goes to our TRT clinic, he gets his estrogen and test checked, finds out the levels are low, and not just like, what a doctor would say or endocrinologist, like, oh, they're normal, but like below that, are there things that men can do that are going to be proven to work before actually going to the replacement therapy?
So I haven't done a personal study on these, but Andrew Huberman claims that there are two specific herbs that you can buy that will boost your testosterone 100 points, 100 units, both of them. So I would go look up Andrew Huberman, his claims when it comes to that. I'm 45. I'm gonna take TRT no matter
Right.
what. So that's why I haven't done that. But I would look into his claims about that, and just I would love to I would love for people to come and give me a testimonial to say whether it works. I have a ton of respect for Dr. Huberman, so
Yeah, me
but
too.
I
And
haven't I
I've seen that stuff too. Those
yeah.
those supplements specifically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So
but
if they
I
work, I would love for people to let me know if they work. If you can consistently maintain 100 points higher because you
mhm.
consume an herb, tell me how that works. I would
But
love to
I
know.
think the part of that that's important is you can't just take the herb and then eat like shit and not sleep
Sure.
and not go to the gym and lift and not
What would be great is
activate.
if you took the herb and then supplemented that with less TRT. That would also be great.
Hmm.
That would also be another option. So instead of taking 100 mgs a week, you take 70 mgs a week, and then you take whatever herb Dr. Huberman prescribes. So you put, but the other thing I need for people to understand is that um, when it comes to the whole big pharma stuff, where big pharma is legitimately trying to push opioids and Ritalin down your child's throat, that thing is real. But when it comes to test, you don't, we, this is not part of big pharma. And I'll explain to you why. Testosterone is so incredibly cheap to produce. It's produced from wild yams. Wild yams. I think grown in Mexico, I believe. I'm not exactly sure. I think there's another way you can produce it. There's maybe grapeseed. I think it's incredibly cheap to produce, and it's really easy to get. So big pharma doesn't actually want you taking testosterone because they don't make any money off it. One, and number two, testosterone. When you take testosterone, you don't need Adderall anymore. Think about the
Interesting.
markup on Adderall versus the markup on testosterone. Markup on testosterone is next to nothing.
Right.
And there's several manufacturers that are not Johnson and Johnson or fucking Monsanto. There's several other manufacturers of testosterone. Several. It's not difficult to manufacture. It already naturally occurs in your body. So it's very safe. Like I would say, compared to like nicotine, it's extremely safe. There's a lot of other things you could take, but testosterone is pretty safe.
Hmm.
There's I mean, I think we're in excess of like 14 million men on TRT now in the United States, something like that. I got
Right.
to look up what the new numbers are, and maybe it's 20 million at this point. And almost never do I have guys come to me and be like, "Yeah, man, it really hurt my soul, and I had to get off." I almost never talk to dudes to get off it. Um, Actually, I can't think of a single guy I know that's ever gotten off it. I know one guy who was 22 years old, started taking it way too early, and then he said it wasn't really helping him. And I was like, "Yeah, of course it's not helping you. You're 22 years old." That's the
Right.
only time I've heard a guy get off it. Um, he shouldn't have been taking it in the first place.
Right.
So
You probably didn't need it at that point.
right.
Yeah.
So it's like taking HGH when you're 18 years old. There's
Right.
really no point. Like your body already produces HGH when you're 18 years old. I mean, there might be some small effects, but I don't know that it's really a. Now, if you're a person who's HGH deficient, then I think you should. I've seen some people grow to be 5 feet tall just because they had an HGH deficiency. So that could happen.
Mhm.
But for the most part, like you're just going to see when you start prescribing people testosterone, all these other health things that they're having, like they're not going to have trouble sleeping. You know why? Because they had a hard day in the gym and then they had sex with their wife for 2 hours. So they're going to sleep really good.
Sleep
So
like a baby. Yeah.
they don't need your fucking Xanax anymore, right? They don't have trouble focusing, so they don't need your Ritalin or your Adderall anymore. So testosterone is actually making men less dependent on pharmaceuticals, right? Which is a
Yeah.
reason why I think what we're going to see is a combination of people opposed to the masculinity of older men and big pharma coming together to try to make exogenous testosterone legal and illegal in the future. That's what I think may happen.
Yeah, that's
I think
unfortunate, and I
I
hope,
think
hope that's
it's
not the
too
case, but I could see it go in that direction.
it's too beneficial to a small group of humans. It's so beneficial for older men, right? Which are considered already a privileged class, if you're in identity
Hmm.
politics. So now you're already a privileged class, and then on top of it, you have the testosterone of a fucking 19-year-old. You know,
Right.
you're a 52-year-old man who just had sex with your 25-year-old girlfriend for 2.5 hours, and now she's bringing a friend home with her. Now, like now those are two girls that the other 25-year-old men can't get. those are two more women that like beta men with low testosterone. They're never going to be able to go out with those girls. You've taken them out of the market because of your fucking testosterone. No, we don't need that anymore. We don't need you working 80-hour weeks as a 55-year-old man, outworking your 30-year-old counterparts. We can't have that happen. You're already too wealthy and wise. Now you're more powerful because you're fucking vigorous again, like you were when you're 19. I certainly think it's going to cause such a massive advantage for older men. Once more and more men get on TRT, I think it's going to get to a point where you're going to start seeing legislation trying to be passed in places like Washington State, where no, men cannot get on TRT anymore.
Right.
It's causing too much
Well, and I
toxic
mean,
masculinity, so we got to get rid of it.
this is part of the reason why I want to get this message out there, because, you know, I see so many guys, and I talk to so many guys every day that tell me, I just can't get motivated. I just can't, like, you know I need to go to the gym. I know I need to lose weight. And in the back of my mind, I have this buzzing like, hey, have you got your levels checked? Because with as heavy as you are, and with, your situation, I know that your levels aren't right.
Yeah.
And so, this is an important message, I think, not only for weight loss and fitness, but just for men's health in general. So, I want to thank you for taking the time to jump on with me and do this podcast.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Men are born. This is really great. Everyone, I recommend Chapter 1, Evolution of Desire. They talk about sexual proclivities. Men generally are born liking women to the most extent, 96% of men. And then about 4% of men liking other men, being homosexual or bisexual. Women will be born and they'll have a spectrum where they'll go through a period of time, gay, what is it called? Lesbian in college. I can't forget what it's called, LIC or something like that. And like they'll go through different
gay
periods
for the
of time
stay. Yeah.
Gay for the stay or whatever. They'll go through different periods of the life where they'll go through different fluctuations in what they find sexually attractive. One thing I need for guys to understand, because there's this really fucking weird narrative. If we're going to get this right, Casey, let's get it completely right. Having low testosterone doesn't make you gay. There's this weird fucking narrative out there. Shout out to Alex Jones, that somehow like lower testosterones are making men gay. That's not how it works. If you go to a gay club sometime, you will see some super fucking ripped, high testosterone gay men. It's not a function of testosterone makes you horny, but it doesn't make you straight, and it doesn't make you gay. And having estrogen doesn't make you gay or make you straight. So let's get that straight, because that's one of these weird things that I'm seeing where guys think, well, he's low T. That's the reason why he blah, blah, blah does this or whatever. Yeah, also, low testosterone, like these people who are in polyamorous relationships who like watching, shout out to Destiny. I have a ton of respect for him, but he lets other men have sex with his wife. And this idea, well, it's because he has low testosterone. I was like, no, because he's gay. Like he's bisexual. That's why he lets men have sex with his wife, right? Because he gets to have sex with other women. Let's stop this narrative that like your endocrine levels are making you gay or straight. Because what it does is it just kind of puts us, I'm trying to have a serious scientific conversation about endocrinology, and we're just getting into like sort of like these weird conspiratorial conversations about the frogs being gay because of fucking pesticides. Let's stop doing that. That's not what's going on here. So let's keep the endocrinology discussion away from the whole sexual proclivity discussion, because I think it's kind of a waste of time. And it's one of these things where you're taking something that's not political, your hormonal system, and you're making it political, and it doesn't need to be.
And it's just adding to the mess that already is happening out there in the world.
Correct. If we're going to get it right, let's get it completely right.
Well, one last question. Have you found any correlation between people who have low testosterone and people who believe the earth is flat?
No, but
that was a joke. I'm just kidding.
No. We could do a study. I'm going to guess it is probably lower than the average. What you will do, however, find is people who generally have a victim mentality, and people who believe the earth is flat. We're going to find that. And then if you were to look at a correlation between people who have low testosterone and people who have a victim mentality, I'll guarantee you will find a correlation between those two.
Yeah.
I think what happens is a lot. It's not the earth is flat. It's that my life didn't work out the way I wanted to, and it's not my fault. That's actually what the earth is flat means, right? When they talk about the Rothschilds, the Illuminati, or if they talk about, lizards living under Antarctica, or, that kind of stuff. It's not that the earth is flat, or even, deniers of, I won't say the word because we're on YouTube, but the thing that happened in Germany in the 1940s,
right?
Those deniers, the reason why they're doing it is not because they believe in the thing. It's that their life didn't turn out the way they wanted, and they need an excuse. They need an external excuse for why their life didn't turn out, because they have a victim mentality. But I will say there's probably a correlation between a victim mentality and low testosterone. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. 100% agree. Awesome. Well, again, thank you for your service. Thank you for taking the time today. Where can people find you, Michael?
You can find me. The best place is go on Instagram. One of the first things I teach you in my course Men of Action is if you're looking to like network with other people, or if you're looking to date women, you're going to have a really really polished social presence. Instagram is where we start, but it's not all Instagram. You know, we work on LinkedIn profiles and dating profiles, and we go over your Twitter and we go over your all these other things, but it's mainly Facebook and Instagram, TikTok to a certain extent. So that's one of the things we have to do. So I like for my clients or my potential clients to communicate with me on Instagram, because I'm just shocked at how many people don't have an IG, don't know how to use IG, don't know how to send DMs. If you do, though, if you write me, I'm going to send you a link to our school server. It is school, SKOOL.com /men of action free. And there's a dash in between each word. And you're going to get to our free school server. And on there, you're going to get a free course, and it's going to teach you the first 4 steps of the Men of Action mentoring program. It's also going to give you a list of 30 perfectly curated Instagrams. It's also going to give you our 30 book list, which includes books on leadership, entrepreneurship, mindset, evolutionary psychology, event planning, social networking, and high status networking. Those 30 book lists. And it's also going to have a schedule of all the different podcasts. So when this podcast comes out, I'm going to put it on the free school server. There's about 1,100 guys in there right now. And then if you guys want to just skip ahead and like, hey man, I love all this free stuff, but I want to join the course, you can just go to moamentoring.com. Feel free to join us, set up a call. I promise you, nobody wants to leave the course. Like, we barely have any refunds. We've got over 600 guys in the course right now. They love it. It's going to be very intense course. I teach it very much like military training instructors taught me, and I teach it very much like a master. I call it a master course and a master's course, meaning you master a skill set and it's taught like getting a graduate degree. That's the way I teach the course. There are modules, there is homework. There's 114 modules in the course and over 2,000 hours of content, plus 6 hours of instruction from me every week, live Zoom calls we do where everyone gets their questions answered, plus unlimited one-on-one calls with me.
Yeah, and that book list and the Instagram profiles alone is worth its weight in gold. I mean, I'm already about 8 books in, and part of that's because I already had a fascination with some of that stuff and read some of those books before finding this space. But it's good stuff. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate your time, Michael.
All right, man. Awesome, Casey. Thank you so much.
All right.